We begin at the top of Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, and the Gemara here is a continuation to the halacha that it spoke about regarding shuls, Beis HaKnesses and Beis HaMedrash, and specifically we started speaking about mezuzah, but then it also spoke about negoyim. There's the halachas of negoyim applied to a shul. The Gemara brought a contradiction of two braises regarding this, and the Gemara in the last answer that it said was the difference between krochim and kfarim. When you have a shul that it's in a big city, there's a lot of people that are just coming in and out of that shul. So over there, it's not a private place, and therefore there's no ownership of anybody, and there's no din of a nega. In the shuls in kfarim, in villages, where there are only a few people that you know exactly who it is that is davens and it comes into this shul, over there, it's like a house of partners, and therefore there is negayim. That was the Gemara's answer. So the Gemara is going to ask on both details of this answer, and in the end the Gemara is going to say that we have to go back to the previous answer. So let's see. Fragt the Gemara, is it true that in shuls that are in large cities and many people go in there, that the halachas of negayim do not apply there? But Vatanya, we learned in a braise, achuzaschem. By negayim, it says the lashon that the Eibusher will bring you a nega and anywhere in the land of Eretz Yisrael that you inherit. Achuzaschem mitame benegayim. So from this we darshan a place that is actually divided for the shvatim, and you inherit a piece of territory. That's where the tum of negayim applies. Ve'ein Yerushalayim mitame benegayim. But Yerushalayim, there's no negayim, the tum of negayim does not apply there, and as we'll see, the Gemara will explain, the reason is because the city of Yerushalayim, according to this opinion, was not divided for the Shvatim. It belongs to all of Klal Yisrael. So it's not an achuzah, there's no one that has that territory for himself. Rav Yehuda argues and says, Ani loy shamaiti, I did not hear the exception that negayim do not apply, elo mokim mikdash bulvad. Only in the Beis HaMikdash, that's the place where the negayim do not apply. So Rabbi Yehuda, as the Gemara will soon explain, holds that Yerushalayim was divided for the Shvatim. But here, before the Gemara explains, the Gemara will soon explain the machlekes of the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda, but before the Gemara says, what do you see from here? Ha, batik nisiyas batim midrashais, metamen benegayim. The shuls are metamen benegayim because it's part of achuzaschem. V'aflagav the krachim, even shuls that are in big cities that many people are there. Because here the Brais it says, Yerushalayim there's no negayim, or in the Beis HaMikdash there's no negayim because it's not achuzaschem. But why should shuls not be part of achuzaschem? So the Gemara answers and says, no, Eime, the way you should read this Brais is, Omar Rabbi Yehuda said, Ani lo shamaiti elo makim mekudash bulvad. I heard that only places that are sanctified, holy places, in other words, not only the Beis HaMikdash, but a makim mekudash, which includes all shuls, but the knesiyas, but the midrashas, they also are excluded from the halacha of negayim because it's not a house, it's not a place where a person lives there. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda was saying, and the Tanna Kama would agree to that. So therefore, all the shuls of the krachim, which are not recognized of any particular owners and shutfim that are there, there's no negayim. So we can leave the answer that we said before. But now, since the Gemara brought up this braise, it's going to explain the machlokes of the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda regarding negayim in Yerushalayim. What's the basis of their machlokes? Tanna Kama Sava, Yerushalayim lo nischalka l'shvatim. Yerushalayim was not divided for the shvatim, and therefore it's not achuzaschem. No one has any territory there. But Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is Yerushalayim nischalka l'shvatim. Yerushalayim was divided for the shvatim. Ubeplukte the Hani Tanoi. Their argument is like the following Tanoim, which the Gemara is going to bring from two different braises. In one braise it says, the Tanya, we learned in a braise, Ma hoye bechelkoi shal Yehuda. Yehuda and Binyamin both shared the space where the Beis HaMikdash was built on. And the Braise here explains, according to the Tana of this Braise, Yerushalayim was divided for Shvatim, and Yehuda and Binyamin both shared the space of the Beis HaMikdash. So what was in the portion of Yehuda? Harabayis, the Halishkais, v'ha'azarais. The Harabayis was in his territory. The Lishkais, the chambers in the Beis HaMikdash, and the Azarais, the different sections of the Azarais. There's the Ezras Noshim, the Ezras Yisrael, and then there's the place where only the Kayanim are allowed to go. That's there's 11 amas that is further inside. Rashi here brings it that only the Kayanim are allowed to go there, up until the Mizbeach. That was in the portion of Yehuda. Which part of the place of the Beis HaMikdash was in Binyamin's portion. Ulam, the Ulam, which is the big room right in front of the Heichal, then the Veheichal, Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim as well. And then the Gemara says, Urutsua, Hoyseyotze mechelka shel Yehuda v'nechneses lechelka shel Binyamin. There was one strip of the portion of Yehuda which really ended right by the Mizbeach, right before the Mizbeach, where there was the 11 Amos that the Kohanim would go there. That's up until where the portion of Yehuda was. But besides that, there was a strip that came out from there, from the portion of Yehuda into the portion of Binyamin, in Uba Haya Mizbeach Bani. And it's on that strip that the Mizbeach, partially at least, part of the Mizbeach, one part of the Mizbeach was built over there. Well, Binyamin Hatzadik and Binyamin, when he saw in the future of what's going to be here, that Yehuda's portion is going to enter into his portion and the Mizbeach is going to be on his portion, he had pain about this and he wanted to swallow up that portion of Binyamin so that the Mizbeach of Yehuda, Binyamin wanted to swallow up that portion in order that the Mizbeach should be on his place. Every day, Shenemar, it says in the pasuk regarding Binyamin, Chayfif Olav Kol Hayom, he hovers above it every single day. So the word Chayfif could also mean, Rashi here says, like a person that's like trying to scratch away or take away to receive or to get what he wants from that portion, that Yehuda's strip went into the place where the Mizbeach was on. So that was the tremendous desire that he had to have the Karbanis brought in his portion. And Lefichach, because we see this tremendous desire that Binyamin had, he wanted that the place of the Shechina, the Beis HaMikdash, and the Karbanis should be in his portion. Zocha Binyamin atzadik v'nase ushpezichen legvura. Binyamin was zeiche, and he became the host for the Eibishter, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim is in his place. Shanema, the pasuk says over there by Binyamin, uvenk seifov shachen, that between his shoulders, that's where the Eibishter dwells. In the Beis HaMikdash, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the place of the Shechina, it's called Bank Seifov, and he was zeicha that the Kodesh HaKadoshim was in his portion, because we see here that he had a tremendous desire to have the Shechina in his place. It wasn't that, I don't know if it was taken away, but he was zeicha that it should be in his place because of the tremendous desire that he had for this. Harabayas, the Azaris, that was Yehuda, and then there was a little strip by the Mizbeach from Yehuda as well, but the rest of the Beis HaMikdash, that was in Binyamin's Chaylik.
The Harabais is behind the Kodesh HaKadoshim too.
So L'chayre means from the Mizrach side. When coming from Mizrach, L'chayre means coming from Mizrach side, it was in Yehuda's Chaylik. I'm not sure from the Ma'ariv side, which is where the Kodesh HaKadoshim is. Maybe. Yeah.
Even before he had Beis Kodesh in his
right. So what it seems like the pshat over here is that because of this desire that he had l'chatchila, so that's why it ended up being this way. His desire was also expressed by the fact that he wanted to have this space in the Mizbech, but he really had this desire, he always had this inyan that he wanted to have the Beis HaMikdash to be in his chaylik, and therefore he was takazayche for it. The Alter Rebbe, by the way, brings this lashon in Tanya, Shpezichen Legvure, in Tanya Perek Lamed Daled. The Alter Rebbe says that Bisman Beis HaMikdash Kayam, where's the host? Who's the host for the Shechina? Binyamin. Where? In the Kodesh HaKadoshim with the Aron. And what's the Aron? The Luchas and the Sefer Torah are inside the Aron. But to Bisman Hazeh, when there's no Beis HaMikdash, so who's the host of the Shechina? So the Alter Rebbe says, when a Yid learns Torah, and the words of Torah enter into your brain, you become a host for the Shechina. You become the Ushpezichen Legvura in your brain. There's the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's Tanya Perek Lamed Daled. So here's the Tana that holds that Yerushalayim was divided into Shvatim. And there's another Tana that holds Yerushalayim loinis chalkal l'Shvatim. Yerushalayim was not divided for the Shvatim. Tanya, it says in the Braisa, Ei maskirin batam Yerushalayim. You cannot rent out any of the houses in Yerushalayim for any of the people. In other words, it were the people that actually lived in Yerushalayim. People came who were Eile Regel, the guests. You cannot rent out anything to them. Why not? You could live there, but it doesn't belong to you. Nobody has any territory or ownership in Yerushalayim. It belongs to all of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Lazar Bar Tzaddik says, or another Gersatei says, Rabbi Lazar Bar Shimon, Afloi mitois. You can't even rent out a space, a bed for anybody in Yerushalayim. It's not yours. Fichach, but therefore what happened was as follows. Oyreis kachim, the hides of the karbanis that the Yidden brought when they were oile regel. They had a lot of karbanis they brought, like Zarashi brings it, the Shami Chagiga and all the other karbanis that they brought. What happened with the hides of all those animals? Bala yushpezichen ash ushpezichnin neitlen oisam bezraya. Right, so the hosts that were hosting all the people that were oile regel, and they didn't get paid. They didn't get paid for it because they couldn't charge. They couldn't rent out any space, any rooms, and so on. They would take them by force because they said, "Look, we're hosting you. In the end of the day, we are hosting you." And this is how they sort of got their payment. They would take it by force. So here, this is the mandama that holds that Yerushalayim was not divided for Shvatim. Amar Abaye says, "Shma mina." From here, you see oirachara, that it's the custom of people, that it's good behavior, it's menschlich. Lemishpak inish. Gulfa or mashche lo shpize. You should leave your gulfa, which is some kind of an earthenware jug, or the hide of the animals that you used from the animals that you ate in the place that you stayed, if you're not paying. So you should leave that over. You should leave something for your host and not just walk away without giving him anything. Okay, so this concludes this part where the Gemara brought up the case of Krochim, where we said before that there's no din of Negayim there. Now the Gemara brings up the other part of what we said before in the answer, the kfarim. Right? Before we said that when you have shuls that are in smaller villages, because we know who davens there, so they're like partners in this shul, and therefore there is the halacha of a negayim in the shuls. That the Gemara says that the kfarim mi mitame ben negayim, the shuls that are in these villages, there's the halacha of negayim apply there. But it says nabraisa regarding the pasuk that it says by negayim la chuzam. So the pasuk there says that the Negayim are going to come la chuzah, that I will give you ani noisen lechem la chuzah, the land that I give you as an inheritance. At sheyichbeshu isa. The halachas of Negayim do not take effect until the Yidden conquered Eretz Yisrael. It took them a while, 7 years to conquer Eretz Yisrael. Kavshu isa, after they conquered it, v'le cholku l'shvatim, and they still did not divide it into shvatim, which took another 14 years. Cholku l'shvatim, or even after another 7 years, that is. Cholku l'shvatim, they divided it to the shvatim, but v'le cholku l'beisavis. They didn't yet get a chance within the shvatim to divide it for each family to have their place. Or cholku l'beisavis, even if they divided it for the families, but ve'en kol echad makir es shaloi. But every individual does not know exactly where his particular territory is. Minayim, from where do I know that the halachas of Negayim still don't apply? You might think, la chuzah. Chuzah means maybe just the general inheritance of the shvatim, and that's enough. Talmud Loima, the pasuk says, uvo asher loya bayis. Loy, it says a singular term, you come to the one, Kayin comes to the one that the house belongs to him, to this person. Mi shemi yuchad loy. The Negayim only applies to someone that has his territory that's for him. Yatsu elu, excluding all these cases before it was completely divided, she'ein yuchadim loy. It's not yet designated for you, and therefore the halachas of Negayim don't apply. So what do we see here very clearly? A shul that has partnership and many people daven there, even if it's in a village and we know exactly who it is that davens there, but still it's not miyuchad for one person. So there should be no halachas of negayim there. So the Gemara concludes, you're right, so we have to answer like the previous answers we said over there regarding the cases where the halachas of negayim do apply, whether we say that it's a place where there's the attendant of the shul that's living there. The Gemara gave different answers, so this answer the Gemara refutes. Gemara goes back now to what it said in the Mishnah. You designate a second kohen for the Aveda Yom Kippur in case the first kohen gadol cannot do the Aveda. Sagt the Gemara azay. Pshite, this is obvious. Ira by psul koidim tamid shel shachar. If the kohen gadol became invalidated to do his Aveda all the way in the morning, before he starts the very first Aveda to bring the carbon tamid. So then, the new Kohen Gadol, we will inaugurate him to become the Kohen Gadol. How? The Tamid Shel Shachar. That he begins the Aveda from the beginning of the day. He puts on the 8 big day Kohona. Till now, this second Kohen that was designated was a Kohen Hedyot, right? And he wore the 4 big day Kohona. But now he's going to come and do the Aveda of the Tamid Shel Shachar. So he puts on the 8 big day Kohona and he starts. That's what inaugurates him to become the Kohen Gadol. Ella, however, ira by psul tamid shel shachar. If the psul of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur happened after the tamid shel shachar is brought, it happened some other time during the day. So now, how are we going to inaugurate the new Kohen Gadol? What's the problem here? So as Rashi explains, the problem is after the Talmud Shel Shachar, the Aveda that the Kohen Gadol does is only with the 4 begadim of Yom Kippur, the Big Day Lavan, which is only 4 begadim, which is the same begadim that a Kohen Hedyot wears. So this second Kohen that's designated to do the Aveda, what exactly elevates him? How is his status being elevated if he's not changing his begadim, he's not in any way being inaugurated to becoming a Kohen Gadol? He just uses the same begadim as a Kohen Hedyot to do the Aveda on Yom Kippur as a Kohen Gadol. What changes his status? From here you see the clothing that you wear can be a change of status, right? So the Gemara says if he puts on the 8 big day kahuna, that changes his status. But otherwise, what is it that changes his status? So the Gemara is going to give 3 answers for this. Ravada Barava's answer is ba'avneit. The avneit, the belt, the gartel, that does change from a Kohen Hedyot to a Kohen Gadol. It's not the same avneit. It's not made out of the same material. We once learned about this before in the Gemara, about the avneit of the Kohen Hedyot, if it's the same as the avneit as the Kohen Gadol, and the Gemara is going to explain that it's not the same material. But the Gemara says that this answer is not going to fit according to everyone. It's a machlokes about this. This is understood according to the opinion that says avneit shel Kohen Gadol zehu avneit shel Kohen Hedyot. The avneit of the Kohen Gadol was the same avneit of the Kohen Hedyot, meaning both the avneit of the Kohen Gadol and the avneit of the Kohen Hedyot was made out of wool and linen together. It was klayim. Right? That was the avneit that they wore all year round. So now on Yom Kippur though, what kind of avneit did the Kohen have to wear? All of the clothing of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur were all made just out of linen. So the avneit that the Kohen wears on Yom Kippur is made only out of linen. And therefore, when this Kohen Hedyot is being elevated to becoming the Kohen Gadol, so he has to change his belt from the one that he uses all year, which is made out of kilayim, and he has to then put on the one that's made only out of linen. So that's the status that gets elevated by changing his gartel. But according to the opinion, the Kohen Hedyot has kilayim all year round. Yeah, sure. But according to the opinion that says that the belt of the Kohen Gadol is not the same as the one of the Kohen Hedyot. Why? Because the Kohen Hedyot, all year round, his gartel was not made of klayim. All year round, his belt was only made of linen. So that is what the Kohen Hedyot is wearing all year round. So he's not changing it on Yom Kippur if he's becoming a Kohen Gadol. So he's not changing his begadim at all. So how is he being inaugurated to becoming a Kohen Gadol? So the Gemara gives a second answer according to this opinion. Amar Abaye loy v'shmeina. So even though the Talmud Shel Shachar was already brought, let him put on the 8 begadim of a Kohen Gadol. Umahapich b'tzinoira, and let him take a fork that's used there on the mizbeach and turn over one of the pieces of the carbon tamid that's burning there on the mizbeach, and to help it burn quicker on the mizbeach, and that's an aveda. He's doing an aveda of the carbon tamid before he comes to the aveda of Yom Kippur. And the Gemara brings a source for this. Look at the Rav Huna, the Amar Rav Huna, zar shahafach b'tzinoira, a zar that comes into the Beis Hamikdash, right? A zar that does aveda in the Beis Hamikdash is chayiv misa. So if a zar only did this little thing that he took a fork and he turned over a piece of the on the mizbeach, chayiv misa. He's already chayiv misa. So I see that this is an aveda. So you could inaugurate the kohen this way by just doing something small with the 8 begadim, and then afterwards he'll put on the 4 begadim that he has even as a kohen hedyot. Third answer, the Gemara says, Rav Papa says, no, you don't have to put on the big day Kohen Gadol in order to become inaugurated as a Kohen Gadol. Avoidasei mechanchasei, the very Aveda of Yom Kippur that he begins to do, that itself inaugurates him to become a Kohen Gadol. As Rashi here says, since the Aveda of Yom Kippur is an Aveda that no one else can do, that's the entire day. Everything of the day is only for the Kohen Gadol. So that by the very fact that he begins doing this Aveda designated for the Kohen Gadol, so that takes him into this status to becoming like a Kohen Gadol. Milay Tanya, that we've not learned the same concept in the Braisa regarding the Kalim in the Beis HaMikdash. Kol HaKalim Shasam Moshe, all the Kalim that Moshe Rabbeinu made for the Mishkan, Mishichasam Mikachasam. They had to anoint it with the special Shemer HaMishcha that it should become sanctified. But Mikam Ve'elech, after the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, when you build all the Kalim, you make all the Kalim for the Beis HaMikdash, what sanctifies? So how does it become holy? The answer is Avedasam Mechanchasam. When you use it for the Aved in the Beis HaMikdash, that inaugurates it, that makes it holy. The same is with the kohen when he becomes a kohen gadol, taking over another kohen that was pasul. Avedasa mechanchasai. It's the aveda itself that inaugurates you, that takes you into this aveda. This is an expression from the Gemara, avedasa mechanchasai, that's used regarding different things as well. When a person has to get into a certain kind of aveda, a certain status, sometimes you think that you have to have some introduction. Sometimes you just jump into it and you do the aveda itself, and that itself, the training happens in the aveda itself. That's where this expression is used. Sagt the Gemara weiter. Now the Gemara goes back now to the gartel that we spoke about before. What was the gartel of the kohen hedyet? Kiyasa Rav Dimi, and when Rav Dimi came, he said, Avneitoi shel kohen hedyet. So regarding what exactly was the gartel of the kohen hedyet made from? Rabbi v'Rabbi Elazar v'Rab Shimon, they argued about this. Chad Omar, one of them said, shel kilayim, that it was made of klayim, just like the gartel of the kohen gadol. V'chad Omar shel butz. The other opinion is that it was made from linen. It was not like the gartel of the kohen gadol all year round. So the Gemara testayim, I'll bring you a raya. The Rebbe, we didn't say here who held which opinion. We just know that they argued about this. But I'll bring you a raya. The Rebbe Huda Omar shel klayim. Rebbe is the one that says that the gartel of the kohen hedyet was made from klayim. The Tanya, because in Abraisa we learned, Ein bein kohen gadol a kohen hedyet. There's no difference in the clothing of a kohen gadol and the kohen hedyet. Ela avnet. The only difference is the gartel. Divrei Rebbe, this is Rebbe's opinion. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, afloi avnet. There's no difference between them, even not the gartel. So the Gemara now explains, what are they saying that there's no difference between the kohen gadol and the kohen hedyet, only the gartel? Amos, what are they speaking about? Are we talking about the kohen gadol and the kohen hedyet every day of the year? The difference is only the gartel? Tuvek, the difference is much more. Kohen gadol mishamish b'shmeina, v'hedyet barba. The kohen gadol wears 8 begadim, and the hedyet only wears 4. So when are they speaking about? Elalav b'yom kippurim. Aren't they speaking about on Yom Kippur? On Yom Kippur, the kohen gadol is also wearing only 4 begadim. And regarding that day, Yom Kippur, they're arguing whether there's a difference between the kohen gadol and the kohen hedyet. And what does Rabbi say? Rabbi says that there is a difference. Rabbi says that yes, the kohen gadol on Yom Kippur wears a gartel which is made up of linen, and the kohen hedyet wears a different gartel. So I see that Rabbi's opinion is that the gartel of the kohen hedyet is made from kilayim. That's why Rabbi is saying that on Yom Kippur there's a difference between the kohen gadol and the kohen hedyet. So this proves that that's Rabbi's opinion. So the Gemara answers, no, it's not a raya. Omri, they said, loy, no, lo oilam, I can really say, b'shayim ma'isashana. This argument in this braisa between Rabbi and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, they were talking about every day of the year. And even though we asked the question every day of the year, the distinction is much more. The kohen gadol wears 8 begadim and the kohen hedyet wears only 4. U'bahanach teshavin. They were asking, what is the difference between the kohen gadol and the kohen hedyet regarding the 4 that they wear the same begadim? There's the added 4 that the kohen gadol wears, but they're only discussing those 4 that they wear the same. Ki asa Ravin, when Ravin came, Ravin basically says the same thing as Rav Dimi. He brings up the same machlekes, but here, in his version of this, we know what Rebbe held. So Amar, he said, Avneita shel kohen gadol b'yom kippurim. As far as the gartel that the kohen gadol wears Yom Kippur, there's no argument about that. Divrei hakol shel butz. Everybody agrees it was made just from linen. B'shayim ma'isashana, the kohen gadol's gartel every day of the year. Divrei hakol shel klayim. Everybody agrees it was made from wool and linen. Klayim. Le'nechleku, where's the machlekes? El bavneita shel kohen hedyet. Regarding the gartel of the kohen hedyet, bein b'shayim ma'isashana and bein b'yom kippurim. Every day of the year in Yom Kippur, there's no difference in the kohen hedyet. And here's the machlekes. Sherebi Omer. So Ravin said that Rebbe is the one that says shel kilayim, that the gartel was made up of the gartel of the kohen hedyet is kilayim. Rab Shimon Omer shel butz. And Rab Shimon says it was made only from linen. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman by Yitzchak said, Afanan nami tanina. We also learned in a braisa, and here in this braisa we'll see that Rebbe holds that the gartel of the kohen hedyet was made from klayim. So it says in the braisa as follows: Al besoray. The pasuk says Al besoray. This is talking about when the kohen gadol gets dressed. So it says over there, and if you look at the pasuk there, it says Lavish hakayim midei bad or michnisei bad yilbash, and then it says Al besoray. It's extra words. There's no reason to say the words Al besoray. Ma talmud loymar. So sorry, the word yilbash actually is extra. The word yilbash is extra, right? What the braisa is saying is, it says v'lava shakayim midei bad, and then also michnesei bad is a yilbash al besarei. Could have just said the michnesei bad al besarei, that the pants is worn right on the flesh. So ma tamad loima yilbash. Why does it say again the word yilbash if it already said in the beginning of the pasuk v'lavash? Lahavi mitznefes va'avneit laharama sadeshen. So this pasuk over here, it's talking over there. It's actually in Parshas Tzav, where it talks about taking out the ashes from the mizbeach. So what the pasuk is saying, an extra word of yilbash to tell you that the kayin has to wear all of his begotten when he takes out the deshen from the mizbeach. He's removing the ashes from the mizbeach. He may have thought that he doesn't have to wear, it's not a regular avodah of doing the karbanis, and he's just removing the ashes. So the pasuk is telling you it's not enough to wear the ksainas and the mechnesayim. He actually has to wear the special hat and the gartel as well. That's why it says over here the extra word yilbash. Divrei Rab Yehuda. That's how Rab Yehuda understands this. Rab Daisa says, Lahavi bigdei kain gadol b'yoma kippurim. This pasuk of yilbash, it's an extra pasuk, and we compare it to the lashon that it says on Yom Kippur as well. It says the lashon of yilbash there, and we compared it to, and what this extra word is teaching me is that the bigdei kain gadol of Yom Kippur sheheng ksherin lekain hadyet. You can use those begadim that the Kohen Gadol wore on Yom Kippur, so for the rest of the year, they could be used by any Kohen Hedyot to wear it to do his Aveda. Okay? That's what Rav Daisa says. Rabbi argues with Rav Daisa and says, no, shtei tshuvas bedavar. I'll give you two answers, two reasons why this is not possible. Chada number one, the avneita shel Kohen Gadol b'yom kippurim, the gartel of the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur, loy zeu avneita shel Kohen Hedyot. It's not the same as the gartel as the Kohen Hedyot. So here we see what Rebbe's opinion is. Why the gartel of the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur is linen, the gartel of the Kohen Gadol every day has to be made from kilayim. So how could you say that he can use the Kohen Gadol's begadim? V'oid, another point that Rebbe says, begadim shenishtamshe behen kedusha chamura, those begadim that was worn on Yom Kippur by the Kohen Gadol for an aveda on a much higher level of kedusha, to shamish behen kedusha kala. Now you're going to lower its status and bring it down for a Kohen Hedyot to use every day in the aveda. You can't do that. So ela matam adloima yilbash. According to Rebbe, when the pasuk there adds the word yilbash again, what is the pasuk saying? It's coming to say that even the begadim that are worn out, it's not in good condition, it's also passes to be used for doing the Aved in the Beis HaMikdash. That's what the pasuk is teaching me. And the extra word by Yilbash. Rashi over here actually brings two pshatim about this. According to one pshat, Rashi says that when it says there that you can even wear worn out clothing for the Aveda, that's only when you're removing the ashes, not for any other Aveda. But Rashi says, no, it's not true, because there are two different stages of taking out the ashes. There's removing it from the Mizbeach, and then there's removing it from that spot where they put down all the ashes near the Mizbeach to outside. One is called Harama Sadeshen, where they removed it from the Mizbeach, and one is called Haitzoa Sadeshen, when they take it completely out of the Azara. So Rashi says, taking the ashes completely out of the Azara, that actually that's very dirty work, and that over there, Rashi brings that you don't wear the begadim because it's like a person that the mashal that Rashi says is the clothing you wear when you're a chef in the kitchen is not the same begadim that you wear when you come to serve the king the food. Right? But the avodah to take the ashes off the mizbeach, it's not a lot of ashes that they took off every day. And for that, you don't get very dirty, and therefore you do have to wear the bigdei kahuna. And therefore Rashi says, when Rebbe is marbe the shchakim, what Rebbe is saying is that for all avodas, you could wear the even worn out clothing. Now the Gemara comes back to explain Rab Daisa's opinion. Rab Daisa says you can take the begadim of the Kohen Gadol of Yom Kippur, and a Kohen Hedyot could use it. Says the Gemara, Rab Daisa follows his opinion, the Tanya. So we learned in the Braise, it says in the pasuk about the begadim of a Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur, v'hinicham sham, that he leaves it there. What do we learn out from v'hinicham sham? So the Tanakama says, Melamed shetu'unim geniza. The begadim that a Kohen Gadol wore Yom Kippur, when he's done with those begadim, geniza, it has to be buried. It can't be used ever again. Rav Daisa says that's not what it means. All it means is shleishtamish ben Yom Kippurim acher. It shouldn't be used again for another Yom Kippur. You have to have fresh bigdei kahuna for another Yom Kippur. But it could be used by another Kohen Hedyot during the year. So this is Rab Daisa's opinion. Tan Rabbanam, we learned in Abraisa, Ira boy psol, what happens if the Kohen Gadol became Pasal Yom Kippur? Uminu achat tachtov, and you designated a second Kohen Gadol, went and took him over to do the Aveda. And then that first Kohen Gadol, let's say, became Tomei, and 7 days later he's able to return to his position to do his Aveda. Now the question is, what happens to this second Kohen Gadol now? He served as a Kohen Gadol for that day, or maybe for a few days. What happens now with him? So Rishain Chayzel Avidas. The first Kohen Gadol that became puzzle, now he can return to his Aveda, so he goes back to his Aveda. Sheni, the second Kohen Gadol, Kol mitzvahs kahuna gedayla olav. All of the halachas of kahuna gedayla are upon him. Whatever stringencies, whatever halachas there are for a Kohen Gadol. As Rashi here brings a whole list of things regarding that he's not allowed to have any avelus, even for relatives. Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry an almana and so on, and he has to wear the 8 begadim. So this second person, he's basically all like a Kohen Gadol. You have 2 Kohanim gedaylim over here. That's Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Yossi says no. Rishain chayzel avidasai. The first Kohen Gadol returns to his aveda. Sheni, the second one, is going to be stuck. Ein roi leila Kohen Gadol. He can't serve not as a Kohen Gadol, and v'leila Kohen Hediot. He can't serve like neither. Can't do the aveda not with the 8 begadim like a Kohen Gadol, and he can't do it not like a Kohen Hediot either, because he can't go down a level. The Gemara is going to explain soon in a moment what's the pshat in this. And the Gemara here brings a story. Amar Rabbi Yosi, Maise beYosef ben Elam beTzipairi. There was a story or from Mitzipairi. There was a story with Yosi ben Elam, a Kohen Gadol that came from Tzipairi. She'ira by Psol beKohen Gadol. So there became a psol in the Kohen Gadol and the Aveda and Yom Kippur. Uminu tachtav, and he was appointed to be the second Kohen Gadol. V'amru Chachamim, and the Chachamim said that Rishon Chayzel Avidas, say the first Kohen Gadol should return to his Aveda, and Sheni, and the second Kohen Gadol, Ein Roi Leila Kohen Gadol v'Leila Kohen Hediot. He can't do his Aveda not as a Kohen Gadol and not a Kohen Hediot. Now the Gemara explains why. Kohen Gadol he can't Mishum Eva, because there's the competition between the two. We don't want there to be the 2 Kohanim Gedalim, so there shouldn't bring a hatred between them. So he can't be a Kohen Gadol. Kohen Hediot he can't go back to Mishum Mailam B'Kodesh V'Loi Meriden. Because he was elevated to the status of a Kohen Gadol to serve with 8 begadim, he can't go down anymore. So what does he do? He retires? So he can't. Yeah, he sort of can't do anything. Yeah, we don't know. Okay, good question. Maybe to get that schus, that 1% to be able to do the Avodah in Yom Kippur, you'd be ready for that. Amar Rabbi Babachan, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Let's just finish the Inyan over here. Alacha ke Rabbi Yosi. So we paskin like Rabbi Yosi, that he can't do either Avodas. But Umayda Rabbi Yosi will agree, she'im ava va'avad, if b'diyaved he went and did the Avodah, and Rashi clarifies that he did the Aveda b'diyaved. It's the Rashi is in the bottom on Yud Beis and Yud Beis. Rashi says if he did the Aveda with the 8 begadim, if he did it with the 4 begadim, then even b'diyaved it's not good because he's not allowed to go down. But if b'diyaved he did the Aveda with 8 begadim, Avedasa ksheira, then the Aveda will be kosher because he really is a Kohen Gadol. The only reason we don't actually let him serve as a Kohen Gadol is because of Eva. Amar Rav Yehuda says, Amar Rav halacha ke Rabbi Yosi. We paskin like Rabbi Yosi. But and when he said, Umayde Rabbi Yosi will agree, that if the first Kohen Gadol passes away, so now the second Kohen Gadol takes him over. So, and that the Gemara asks, Pshita, of course, why shouldn't he take him over? The issue was Avid, that there would be jealousy between them, but if he passed away, why shouldn't he take him over? The Gemara answers, because I would think to say, Havyulate Sada Mechayim, that maybe if the first Kohen Gadol knows that this second Kohen Gadol is going to take me over as soon as I die, so the second Kohen Gadol is davening every day that this person should pass away, that he should take him over. So for that reason itself, there'll be a hatred between them. Kamash Malon, that we're not concerned about that. Taisus here brings up, this is a famous Taisus, because Taisus brings up the question, why is the Gemara saying halacha ke Rabbi Yosi? Usually there's a klal in the Gemara regarding all of these arguments that are only negeya to the Beis HaMikdash when Mashiach comes, that the Gemara doesn't say who the halacha is like, because this is what's called Hilchas Hila Mashiach. It's only a halacha that's negeya l'asad lavai. And the Gemara doesn't usually say who the halacha is like when it's negeya l'asad lavai. Taisus brings a few answers. According to one answer in the Gemara in Taisvus, he says, no, the Gemara will tell you who the halacha is like, even if it's only negate to when Mashiach comes. Because ani ma'amim b'emunah shlema, we're mechake for Mashiach every single day, and the Gemara will say who the halacha is like, even though it's only negate to the Beis HaMikdash. We find the Gemara that it says that it does not say Hilchas Hila Mashiach. That's only in a scenario where it's somebody that's negeya to when Mashiach comes and there's an Aveda involved. If it's an inyan of an Aveda, and it's only neget when Mashiach comes, that the Gemara does not bother saying who the halacha is like. But otherwise, the Gemara will say. There's a few answers here in Taisus. That's one of the answers. Okay.